Hi, my name is Sean. I'm calling from Washington State. How are you today?
Doing well. Sean, how are you?
I'm doing well, too, thanks. So I just wanted to call and follow up sort of on one of the comments that Matt was saying and you about these federal workers not being elite. You know, living out west, one of the main ways in which I interact with our federal government is through resource agencies. I hunt and I do other things outside. And when about 3,400 Forest Service employees were fired as a result of these cuts, and when I became aware of this, I reached out to some hunting and conservation groups that I'm a part of, and I asked them to stand up for these workers. And it was just amazing to see some of the comments that people who are supposedly, avid users of our public land, they believe that these cuts were going to be made primarily to elites. There are no elites in the Forest Service. Upper management. That's not what happened. These cuts are to working people who live, especially in these resource agencies like the BLM and Forest Service. They live in very remote areas where oftentimes these agencies or these offices, ranger districts, those sort of things, are one of the larger employers. I mean, remote central Idaho, remote southeastern Oregon, remote northeastern Washington, Montana, Wyoming. These places are not.
I know. But
it's just shocking.
Well, this is where the Democrats need to take a federal worker who's from one of the areas you're talking about and come up with some grandstanding bill about protecting the federal workforce, like the Lake and Riley Act, and say, yeah, it's the Luke Graziano Act, protecting our veterans from Doge and Donald Trump and billionaires. Now. Do it now, because what you're saying is they have left a vacuum on so many issues, but including this one, that they could be categorizing these federal workers as your neighbors, as opposed to faceless bureaucrats, which is entirely a right-wing ideology. But you have guys like Josh Shapiro coming out and saying, oh, we've got to be efficient. You've got Moskowitz or whatever that freak's name is on the Doge caucus endorsing all this kind of thing. And then you have Hakeem Jeffries, I guess, with his thumb up his ass and waiting so they can use this as leverage in the budget negotiations. But if we had a functioning political party, this was better with Alan Grayson going on the House floor and saying the Republicans' healthcare plan for you is to die quickly. Where is that right now? Who is our version of that?
Yeah. A lot of it is the efficiency mindset, which efficiency, when said by these people, is profit maximization and more money for speculators who should be taxed way more than they already are, to even more money for them to play with. But I completely agree. I come from a conservative background, hunted multiple times a year, multiple different types of licenses, but also come from a family that knows the importance of a game and fish department for making sure that all this stuff is regulated. But I know, frankly, a lot of hunters are weekend warriors who just buy the fucking gear and go Donald Trump Jr. it for the weekend and don't give a fuck about the land that they're on because they're probably on some rich guy's land anyway. There's no sort of actual stewardship thing there. And one of the big laments I've had is that people who do hunt and do enjoy the outdoors completely missed what capitalists are doing to all of that shit. And it's not because environmentalists off-put them. It's because corporate propaganda has completely blinded them to the threat that's coming for their lands, to continue privatization, to make it really what hunting is in the UK, which is a rich man's hobby.
Yeah, that's 100% right. That is 100% right. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this because living back east, and I'm not sure. I don't get the impression that you're plugged into, the things that go on in the hunting community, maybe the public lands arena. But there was a lawsuit that was filed by the state of Utah, essentially to declare basically unappropriated, which means unimproved federal lands that were managed by the BLM, basically give those back to the state of Utah. There is a real push in Western states to have our public land turned over to these states that have no budget to manage them. And then what will happen is that public land will be sold off to developers and capitalists. And these people who think that they
for like mineral mining
who
too.
Enjoy, yeah, well, or yes, and possibly ski resorts, possibly housing developments. You know, things.
Yeah.
The one interesting thing is, you know, Donald Trump, you know, during the campaign, you know, discussed the possibility of developing some of these federal lands. There's no water to live. These arid, wet public lands. These western public lands are extremely arid. You cannot develop those lands for like dense housing. And the Colorado River is already overly appropriated, which is, you know, a lot of the Bureau of Land Management land is in that, you know, Colorado River basin. So the point of it is, this is an attempt to privatize our public land. It is a first step to privatizing our public land. You know, they've cut the government. They're going to, now the next thing will be, see how poorly our public land is being administered because it's owned by the government. Private enterprise can do better. Let's work towards privatizing this land. And then it won't be, and then it will be accessible only to the elites.
Yep. I mean, that's the model. Have you heard of Big Sky in Montana?
Yes.
I mean, that's the model, right? Like I believe, or maybe it's not that exact resort, but there's a resort next door that's just a private mountain.
Yep.
Like Tom Brady, I think, has a house there or whatever. Like
owned by a Massachusetts-based hedge fund.
Right.
The entire town.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and this is the network state that the tech guys are talking about too.
That's right. Well, I'll say this. You know, Matt was talking about Western hunting turning into something like it is in Europe for only the truly wealthy. That is what's happening. And, you know, there are people who, like for instance, you know, Joe Rogan, who goes and hunts on these private tracts where he gets a hunt. I don't know if he gets it for free or not, but he's basically hunting on these what are effectively private game preserves that are abutted by public land, but which the public cannot get access to. And the hunt itself is worth tens of thousands of dollars. And then he posts these things on social media or talks about it on his podcast. And you know, there's a growing movement in the hunting community to stand up to this sort of activity. And when he discusses in his podcast, and you know, talking about like overcrowding issues, he said, "Hey, dummies, just go find another trailhead." It's like, you know, let them eat cake. You know,
right?
The rich boys are on this one. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, and I'm almost done here. The last thing I want to say is my wife is actually a migration lawyer in the same community as Ronald Reagan, and I just would like to say that, you know, it's a scary time. And the first couple weeks, maybe a month of this presidency, she was coming home nightly, if not in tears, almost in tears. Her clients were in tears meeting with her. And, you know, I just want to encourage everybody to look at the people who these efforts are being taken against as our neighbors, our brothers and sisters, and to stand up for them, and because they are scared. And that's all I have to say. So thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. All right. Cast Iron Jake, Utah's specific plan is to actively take all the national public lands in Utah and then sell them off and privatize all of it. They spent a couple million trying to see the federal government sue. I think you mean the federal government over it.
It's the war on the public anything. It's enclosure. It's Tim Heidecker saying it's free real estate. That's what it is.
Dave from Jamaica, great point, Matt. I think people confuse working poor in rural areas with fail-son LARPers who pretend to be that. Yeah, I mean, it's the same people that confuse the folks that stormed the Capitol on January 6th with, like, working class Americans when they were owners of, like, pool cleaning companies from a suburb in, you know, Missouri that could afford to fly to D.C. to storm the Capitol.
Yeah, that's sort of, I think, the category error with, like, the idea of a so-called small business owner is sometimes like, people in that, like, you know, very conservative people who are pretty wealthy because they either like own a roofing company or like plumbers or are, because plumbers do make a lot of money, or hot tub installment companies, things like that. They're small business owners, but they're also, that doesn't mean they can't possibly be reactionary or like, have very, very far right-leaning tendencies.
Right. Exactly right.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. In terms of protections for people, we have obviously what's going on in the courts. Various, organizations are bringing a suit. Who in this... in the suit that is taking place in Boasberg's court, I know that the Brennan Center is involved in dealing with Khalil. In Boasberg, who is the plaintiffs, I guess, in that case? Who is attempting to stop the deportation of these people?
Yeah, that's the ACLU and an organization I'm less familiar with. I think it's called Democracy Forward. It's also a legal institute. They're bringing the lawsuit on behalf of 7 or 8 plaintiffs. It's common in immigration law for plaintiffs to be listed by their initials. So if you look at the complaint, it's just the initials. We don't have their full names. But it's several immigrants who, at the time of the complaint, were being held in a detention center in Texas, either the same detention center or a similar detention center that where the folks who were put on the flights to El Salvador, where they were being held in detention, and basically filing this lawsuit to say, hey, we are at risk of being deported under this new invocation of the Alien Enemies Act. We want to proactively, ask for an injunction so that we don't end up getting put on the plane, because we know if once we're put on the plane, we can't file a suit. So it's sort of a proactive and protective lawsuit.
Injunctions are offered when if there's no court action, the damage may be permanent and irreversible. And if you're flown to a jail in El Salvador, there's a good argument that it is irreversible, at least in terms of. Have they expanded the plaintiffs' pool? Can they make it a class? In other words,
it is filed as a class.
So they're not just, there's 6 specific plaintiffs, but they're representing everybody who might be essentially disappeared on one of these planes.
Yes, they've asked for it to be recognized as a class action suit. And, a class action suit basically says this is going to affect a whole bunch of people, not just this narrow number of people. And there's no way for us to contact everyone, in advance. So we're asking for protection for everyone. And I think that's the right decision, because it is going to affect hundreds of thousands of people. It's probably a good time to just mention, because it could have easily slipped by in the absolutely overwhelming deluge of immigration news. But the Trump administration has now begun to strip Venezuelan citizens of temporary protected status. These are hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans fleeing Venezuela who, as I remember, used to be, an enemy of the United States, and the United States wanted, was trying to, welcome refugees from these quote unquote communist countries. Whatever we think about that, that was the history. I guess
we were actively trying to destabilize the country and promoting a guy,
Guaido,
good to be the president of the country
who wasn't elected,
who was not elected.
Exactly. Well, guess what? All of these Venezuelans who came legally under the policies of the U.S. government when they came, they're being stripped of their temporary protected status. So what that means is, as if temporary protected status means anything to this administration anyway, but it's so important to understand it's not just about a couple hundred, guys with tattoos. This could potentially affect hundreds of thousands of people who came to the country seeking asylum. And by the way, one of the most interesting and maybe underreported contradictions in all of this is that, ironically, in labeling Tren de Araguas a terrorist organization, the Trump administration had to say that they have state-like power in Venezuela. They have so much power in Venezuela that they are either state-sponsored or almost a state-like power. Well, guess what? Our asylum laws very specifically say that that fleeing persecution and seeking asylum, one of the factors that contributes to the legitimacy of that claim is when your persecutor is either the state or a state-like actor, precisely Tren de Araguas, whom many people have fled to seek asylum, and now they're being lumped in and potentially deported back. So it's a weird contradictory position that the Trump administration has taken. But, I mean, they've thrown coherence to the wind, I realize. But it's important for, I think, the rest of us to remember that point.
So we have lawsuits as one level of protection. Mm-hmm. What are the others as we sort of like move outside of the courtroom into, I imagine, sanctuary cities and the refusal of localities to cooperate with ICE can slow the roll. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine activists on the ground also can further contribute to sort of like getting in between ICE and them going after people.
Their neighbors. And let's be clear, ICE does not appear to need a reason and does not need to appear to justify, like, the only accountability ICE seems to have, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if they deport a citizen, then there's theoretically political blowback and maybe, I don't know, some type of settlement there. But just about anybody else, and apparently green card people, they can deport absent like some major political pushback or something that slows their roll to get this person out of the country.
Yeah, it's really challenging to figure out what you can do right now if you're someone who might be targeted or if you know people who can be. I mean, a lot of organizations are trying to help people understand what their rights are in these situations. Obviously, the Trump administration is not really interested in respecting, civil rights and due process, but we have seen evidence that that's quite useful when people do understand what their rights are. We saw in Chicago when ICE tried to, do a bunch of immigration sweeps and arrests in Chicago. Thomas Homan, complained that it was harder because so many people understood what their rights were, and they didn't open the door when they weren't required to open the door, and things like that. So,
give us a little bit more of a list of what those things are.
Sure. So, ICE will often come to residences. For instance, a lot of lawyers really encourage immigrants, you don't open the door unless it's an actual warrant signed by a federal judge. An immigration warrant itself does not have the power to put ICE into your house if you don't invite them in. So keep your door shut unless you see a judicial warrant signed by a judge. Don't talk to ICE about your case. Don't answer questions without an attorney there. That's really important. Make sure that you have an attorney, or make sure you have someone to call. Make sure that you understand if you are stopped for some reason, have a strategy for you and your family to know what you're going to do next, because, the Trump administration and the way that ICE works, they can be very quick at putting someone in detention and moving them across the country without telling you. So you really want to have a plan and let people know things like that. There are some things on the back end that are kind of rare. Judges can force ICE to allow someone to come back into the country if they deport someone who does have a pending federal case. I have seen that happen. It's rare, but it can happen. And then I think, generally speaking, this is one of those pieces of advice that I think there's a lot of hand-wringing about, because it goes two ways. But a lot of folks in immigrant communities I know are telling folks, look, just try to avoid law enforcement, avoid emergency personnel, try to avoid those situations where you might come into contact with any law enforcement officer. Unfortunately, that has the consequence of driving many immigrant communities underground, and we don't always have that option, right? So right. That's a scary scenario. It's scary for law enforcement too, because law enforcement, very often report that they need cooperation from communities that they police to do their job. So it's a very difficult kind of thing for communities to grapple with. And then lastly, someone at a university and who has international students myself, in my classes and internships and things like that, I mean, I think it's a real question. If you're here on a student visa, do you want to risk leaving the country to go see family over a break, knowing that when you come back into the country, you could be vetted and screened and, like what happened to the doctor coming back into Boston, it puts you at a different kind of risk level. So it just means that people have to make really difficult decisions that they shouldn't normally have to make, but it is tough.
I don't know why those students there's such an invasion going on. Why don't they just go in with the huge invasion and just use this invasion as a camouflage? And just lastly, because it seems to me at one point they're going to have to justify the invocation of this Alien Enemies Act. Where are we in terms of what they call an invasion? In terms of like any possible metric by which we talk about immigrants in this country who are undocumented, half of whom are just simply here after they have overstayed their documented period, which is a really inefficient way to invade a country, it seems to me.
Yeah.
But where are we relatively historically speaking? Because if we're not at a peak right now, it's really hard to say we're being invaded if we've been invaded for the past 50 years and we still seems to be a functioning country.
Yeah, it's a terrible time to claim that we are experiencing an invasion. Border encounters along the U.S.-Mexico border are at a multi-year low. It's been declining for months and months. Unlawful crossings, illegal crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border has been down considerably, especially after the Biden administration created lawful pathways for humanitarian reasons to lawfully seek asylum, which is what our immigration law says that people can do. They created lawful pathways that allowed a mechanism for that. People aren't, crossing the border unlawfully. They're coming into the country, following protocol, following, the law and policy. So this is not a good time to claim that we're under invasion. We've been, if you just look at the numbers, we haven't been less under an invasion in years and years. So not really great timing when you look at the data.
Austin Kocher, the Substack is austinkocher.substack.com.
Coker. I messed you up. It's my fault.
It was her fault.
It's my fault.
It was her fault.
I have one of those hard to pronounce immigrant names, one of those for that. So,
Yes, we know you're leading the invasion brigade as well. So
yes.
Research professor, Syracuse University. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. We'll put a link to your Substack at the in our podcast and YouTube description.
Thanks so much, Sam. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. Long waits, waves of calls, web crashes, Social Security is breaking down. That is the headline of a Washington Post story discussing Social Security. The Social Security Administration website crashed 4 times in 10 days this month. Incidentally, the month is only 2/3 gone at this point, 3/4. How many business days have probably taken place this year? That's probably about half of the business days the website has crashed, blocking millions of retirees and disabled Americans from logging on into their online accounts because the servers were overloaded. In the field, office managers have resorted to answering phones at the front desk as receptionists because so many employees have been pushed out. However, the agency no longer has a system to monitor customers' experience with these services because that office was also eliminated as part of the supposed cost-cutting, I put in the word supposed, efforts led by Elon Musk. And the phones keep ringing and ringing. This is even before they have implemented this new rule, which will not allow you to confirm your identity via the phone, forcing people to come into offices that are already incredibly understaffed. And when you have website crashes, that is because you don't have enough people to maintain the server status. This is what their plan is. This is what their plan has been since the beginning. This is why they were talking about DEI, and they never talk about DEI anymore, because that was their wedge to get in. And USAID was the low-hanging fruit, and they just started from there and went everywhere else. But here's another story from the day before. Why DOJ is struggling to find fraud in Social Security. I think this also was in the Washington Post. You had DOJ first going out and talking about Musk's assertion that tens of millions of dead people over 100 years old are receiving Social Security benefits. Within a day or two, Lee Dudek, the, what would you call him, stooge, who was working in Social Security and decided to join Team DOJ, had to come out and say, well, these individuals are not necessarily receiving benefits. Less than 1% of Social Security payments in recent years were determined to be improper, often the result of an accidental oversight or change in benefit status. This is according to a report last year by the agency's Inspector General. Incidentally, that Inspector General was fired.
Yep.
Almost 2 months ago now.
Trump cleaned house for all the inspectors general who are tasked with finding the fraud that they say that Elon Musk
Fraud
is
and
now
waste.
finding. But he's
So that number, 1% of Social Security payments, was $9 billion a year. And more than 2/3 of that, $6 billion, probably close to 7, of the mistaken payments were eventually clawed back, which means highly unlikely that it was fraud, more likely that they just got a check in the mail that they shouldn't have had, which incidentally, I think people get money in their bank account that should have been theirs, or they get a check from, I mean, that happens all the time. Another agency audit, which looked only at payments to retired workers and survivors and people with disabilities, found fraud was listed as the cause behind just 3% of improper benefit payments. Social Security, despite all of the money that flows through it, didn't make a 2024 list by the Government Accountability Office detailing 16 agencies with improper payment rates of at least 10%. Social Security is the fraud rate, even the improper payment rate is incredibly low. Right. The fraud rate is astronomically low. Again, this is an agency that serves tens upon tens of millions of people. And it has a tiny fraud rate. And why is it? Because fraud is never or rarely committed by recipients. There's some. Fraud is usually done by providers. Mm-hmm. That means businesses.
Contractors?
Contractors. That report further found that 80% of all improper payments were due to just 5 government programs, including Medicare and Medicaid, but not Social Security. And is it Medicare or Medicaid recipients who are doing that fraud? No. It is doctors, ambulance companies, medical device providers who are committing the fraud. They're claiming they have patients that they didn't have. They're claiming costs that they didn't have. They're claiming, providing materials that they didn't provide. It's not recipients. Social Security is one of among the most scrutinized and audited agencies in government, with frequent probes by its 500-person Office of Inspector General. It used to be that size. It pays outside auditors to examine its book. Congress grills agency officials. Last year, a major focus, you ready for this? A major focus in congressional hearings, led by the Republicans, was not waste or fraud. It was about Social Security being too aggressive in clawing back accidental benefit overpayments. Mm-hmm. I want to repeat this. Social Security has a 1% rate of improper benefits, $9 billion worth. $6 billion of that, a little bit more, is clawed back each year because they were made just accidentally. And last year, a major focus in congressional hearings led by the Republicans was not waste or fraud. It was about Social Security being too aggressive in clawing back those accidental benefit payments.
It's the same reasoning behind their cutting of the IRS agents, is because the enforcement that would that increase funding for the IRS would be to go after rich people who are like scamming the government and not paying their fair share in taxes. It's the same thing with these providers with Social Security. That's what they're concerned about.
I mean, there's no providers in the context of Social Security.
Not providers. I mean, sorry, the contractors or the what you were referring to earlier. It's the same thing that happened with Rick Scott with the Medicare.
That's Medicare and Medicaid.
Medicare and Medicaid fraud. Those are the people that are actually ripping off the government.
Incidentally, the IRS is anticipating about $500 billion less in revenues, something like somewhere around 10% to 15% less in revenues because of all the Doge cuts already. The agency has millions of people in its databases who lack recorded dates of death, the result of an old computer system and events that are decades in the past. That doesn't mean they are getting checks. Social Security auditors in 2023 reported that 98% of those without recorded dates of death were not receiving agency benefits and were known to be deceased. Agency officials said it was costlier and riskier to update the records than to do nothing. In other words, it was more efficient and less wasteful, since those people were not getting benefits, to just do nothing than to actually go in and clean those records up. The degree of scrutiny by Social Security's Inspector General can be intense. One report issued by the office earlier this month found that a partner agency in Mississippi had incorrectly made, are you ready for this? A $14 payment because of a data entry error. In other words, the Inspector General's office was so efficient that it caught a $14 error. Social Security's Inspector General was fired in the first days of the Trump administration. Incidentally, one of the other cuts by Doge included funding for a University of Wisconsin at Madison study to project to understand how to prevent imposter scams. Government imposter scams, most commonly pretending to be from the Social Security office, resulted in an estimated loss of at least $577 million last year, often by conning seniors into sharing personal data. And then they go in and do this. So it's not recipients who are screwing them over. It is things like, in fact, I did that video from this chair a couple of years ago, 5 years ago. I got a call from a fake Social Security office. And they try and get your Social Security number and this and that. And Doge literally cut a study to try and figure out how to prevent this. And that is the source of a significant amount of fraud, of the tiny amount of fraud that is in the Social Security system, because these people steal people's information and then they get the check sent to the wrong place. If you go to handsoffsocialsecurity.org, you can see Social Security Works is setting up people to rally at their local Social Security offices, because every single congressional member of Congress needs to be pressured because of what they're doing to Social Security. Hat tip to Spocko. Thank you. Here is the confirmation hearing for Trump's Social Security pick, Frank Bisignano, who basically is a corporate raider, I guess you could call him. He's going in and trying to figure out how to privatize Social Security. This is Senator Ron Wyden.
Our nominee has made a career out of taking over troubled businesses and using what I think is a pretty ominous recipe. Gut the company by firing hundreds or thousands of workers, sell off pieces of the business, and merge with another company. That resume and approach ought to concern Americans if somebody is thinking about applying that pattern to Social Security. As I've been saying for weeks now, this approach is a prelude to privatizing Social Security and handing it over to private equity. Every single member of this committee knows that there are ways to strengthen Social Security. But what Social Security does well year after year is to get the checks out the door to seniors that rely on them on time every single month. I'll close by saying improving Social Security doesn't start with shuttering the offices that handle modernization, anti-fraud activities, and civil rights violations. It doesn't start with indiscriminately firing or buying out thousands of workers. And it doesn't start with restricting customer service over the phone and drawing up plans to close field and regional offices. The Musk-Lutnick-Trump plan for Social Security is to take away earned benefits from seniors, hollow out the agency in preparation to hand it over to private equity, and give the savings over to their billionaire friends. The fact of the matter is Social Security could be fully funded for generations to come if you just cracked down on billionaire tax cheats and eliminated the payroll tax cap for millionaires and billionaires.
He goes on to say, here he is where he's questioning
The Doge guy.
the Doge guy.
If you're confirmed, will you lock Doge out of Social Security databases and stop them from exposing millions of Americans who could be damaged?
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to make something clear about this dynamic. A court ordered Lee Dudek not to allow Doge into these databases. And that is when Dudek started threatening to shut down the entire Social Security system. And then I think probably either administration people or people in the Senate started saying, hey, dude, you can't do that. We got to do this a lot more sneaky. That's too obvious. Which incidentally, that dynamic, why they got to like chip away at it, slow rolling like they're doing, to undermine the relationship of Social Security to people, to citizens across the country, is exactly why Chuck Schumer's strategy, and I imaginary air quotes there, is such a failure, because he's providing cover. He's literally providing camouflage to them to destroy Social Security, and to do so in such a way that it is far more stealthy than if Donald Trump supposedly stopped payments, which he wouldn't do. Go ahead.
If you're confirmed, will you lock Doge out of Social Security databases and stop them from exposing millions of Americans who could be damaged?
Sir, I've spent my career protecting PII in the largest institutions. I think it's of the utmost importance for PII to be protected. And yes, I will ensure it's protected.
So will you lock Doge out? It's a very specific yes or no question. Will you lock Doge out of Social Security databases?
I'm going to do whatever is required to protect the information that is private information. So I don't know what lock Doge out means, but there's way more than Doge that can't have access to that information, sir.
I would like that in writing, that you will lock Doge out of the Social Security databases. Will you furnish that in writing?
I don't know what locked Doge out of the Social Security.
It's got a pretty simple concept. When you lock somebody out, you stop them.
There's lots of databases, but PII will not be exposed.
If you're confirmed.
That sounds like he doesn't want to keep Doge out.
I don't know what you mean, but I know I don't want to affirmatively commit to it right now.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I also cannot agree with trying to figure out what you're talking about. Blind anti-imperialism if there is only 1% fraud out of trillions of dollars, why didn't the Inspector General ever put a stop to it? Clearly, they were not doing a great job. I can't tell if this is a joke, but first of all, there's not trillions of dollars that are paid out in Social Security annually. I made it clear there wasn't 1% fraud. There were 1% improper payments. How do you know they're improper as opposed to fraud? Because 2/3 of that $9 billion was clawed back. So if you assume the money that all of the money, and this is an assumption, but I will grant it, stipulate it, because you really either are ignorant or being obnoxious about it, and I'm happy to address either. If you assume that 3%, that 1/3, so now we're down to 0.3, is all fraud. The vast majority of that fraud is not from recipients, but from people spoofing other people's Social Security numbers. You would not cut the program that was studying how to stop those. Banks get robbed. Money gets extorted. There's crime everywhere.
Yeah.
But to talk about 0.3% of fraud in any type of thing, like your local CVS would beg to have that kind of percentage of loss.
Oh, any private entity, major private entity, like not for nothing, the Pentagon. Like, I mean, what's the percentage of their budget, since they can fail an audit basically every year, that just goes out the window? I mean, I know that's not fraudulent, but it's completely wasted money. Like, the beauty of Social Security is that it's a completely straightforward self-funding mechanism that's easily traceable, and there's always going to be some redundancies and issues when you're dealing with a system this large in a country with well over 300 million people in it. That the fact that that's the rate of whatever fraud or waste is actually fairly miraculous when you compare it to any other institution that would be comparable.
If we could get even double the amount of fraud in Social Security and apply that to every other endeavor in this country, the savings would be astronomical.
Yep.
Astronomical. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. The court that specifically deals with tariffs and trade found that Trump's invocation of the tariffs under the Emergency Economic Powers Act was wrong and illicit. That ruling has been stayed for the sake of appeals. In the meantime, Donald Trump, as you know, you played this clip yesterday,
right,
much to my chagrin, because I found this clip to be one of the most fascinating clips of Donald Trump in ages. Donald Trump was asked about this new acronym that is being used by Wall Street traders called TACO, which is Trump always
chickens out.
Chickens out.
It's a chicken taco.
And
I am hungry.
And Trump always chickens out. And apparently that's a taco trade is one where you're basically betting that his promise of imposing tariffs are actually not going to happen. So you buy when certain companies dip because of anticipation for the tariffs, but you're betting that this guy's always going to choke, essentially, and that he's cowardly.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it has actually nothing to do specifically with
digestion,
the food. And it's just the name of it. And so these taco trades, and a reporter made the mistake, obviously you got to do it, asked him about it. And he had, honestly, his reaction, we won't play it again. You saw it yesterday, I think. He completely falls apart. Completely falls apart. it feels like there's nothing that could set him off more than the idea that he is cowardly and he's chickening out, because his whole thing is bravado. And and it's not just that, like, it's coming from Wall Street. And there is no doubt in my mind, there is a dynamic between a guy who is a real estate developer in New York and the implication of Wall Street money.
Oh, yeah.
And that relationship between finance and his real estate.
Well, he's obsessed with the stock market, too, right? And he's desperate, I think, always throughout his whole life to be taken seriously by the real money people.
Indeed. And on top of that, like, theoretically, I mean, you all remember that we played that video early on this year of him right after he won the election in 2017 or 2016, walking into the 21st Club or whatever it was.
We'll get your taxes down.
And I'm going to get your taxes down. I mean, these are his people.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're making fun of him behind his back, this is the thing. And I generally don't buy into, like, Donald Trump's going to be really mad if you retweet this meme. But this is different, because this is not, he's orange or his hair is whatever.
And it's also, unfortunately, creating the wrong incentives for him, because it's trying to get him to engage clearly in more like risky, destructive tariff negotiations to create more uncertain. Like, why are we egging him on with this?
Well,
is the question.
Here's the thing is that, like, I am of the mind that you don't back down because you're afraid that he's going to do something crazy, because that's exactly what he wants. However, there are consequences to that. Scott Bessant went on the yesterday and on Fox News to talk about the supposed negotiations with China. And the bottom line is China basically said to us, F you. We don't need you.
Yeah.
We're not going to bend to your demands. We're just not. You want to end this relationship? End it. And here's Scott Bessant, who, a week or two ago was saying, like, we got this. We got so many deals on the table. And here he is today. He's got a signal to his business friends. That's what's going on here.
Right.
And what about China, specifically China, and that obviously started in a different place? How can you characterize those talks now?
I would say that they are a bit stalled. I believe that we will be having more talks with them in the next few weeks, and I believe we may at some point have a call between the president and party chair Xi.
So stalled. There was a time when the president thought that it was moving forward pretty significantly.
Again, I think that given the magnitude of the talks, given the complexity, that this is going to require both leaders to weigh in with each other. They have a very good relationship, and I am confident that the Chinese will come to when President Trump makes his preferences known.
All right, so let me go.
Okay, wait. No, just first off, I'd like to see him when he's exuding not confidence. He thinks the talks will start in the next few weeks. He thinks eventually Trump and Xi will talk on the phone. And then he believes that unless they do, nothing's ever going to happen. That is not
leadership.
Well, he clearly is just sitting in the bleachers for this.
They're at the whims of the Mad King. It just depends on how he rolls over in the morning and what he decides to do. And that's the whole administration is designed to that effect.
Now, the Mad King turns out to also be a coward, both in the fact that, like, he's now been told to his face, you chicken out every time. Bessant goes on television yesterday, and he's told that he chickens out. That happened on Wednesday night, right? And he's fuming. And there's no doubt that he has not slept a wink because of that. And then Basant gets on there and says, basically, I can't do anything, and nobody short of the president can do anything because we can't tell what the president wants us to do.
Right.
And so he's fuming. He's mad that he's getting mocked by people on Wall Street. And this is what he comes out with. There's two things he actually came out with. One, he came out going after Leonard Leo because Leonard Leo had promised him, if you choose my judges, they'll never go against you. And it was a Trump-appointed judge who went against him on the tariffs.
It was a 3-judge panel, Reagan, Trump, and Obama, unanimous, that went against this, like just the emergency authority with the 1977 law. So we said this yesterday, but the aluminum and steel tariffs that affect the auto industry, they were used under like a more traditional authority where you have to apply and then seek public comment. But this, the schizophrenic Liberation Day tariffs are the ones that are affected by this.
And a huge portion of the Chinese tariffs are part of this sort of like Liberation Day. And okay, so this is where he goes after Leonard Leo, and he refers to them. I mean, this is. He says, the U.S. Court of International Trade incredibly ruled against the United States of America and desperately need tariffs, but fortunately the full 11-judge panel on the U.S. Court of Appeals has stayed the order by the Manhattan-based Court of International Trade. The implication, of course, that this has something to do with the fact that it's in Manhattan, other than the fact that, like, well, Manhattan's probably the center of where these trade deals are actually executed. Where do these initial 3 judges come from? How is it possible for them to have potentially done such damage for the United States of America? They all 3 come from America. And as Emma said, Reagan and
Trump and Obama.
I was new to Washington. It was suggested I use the Federalist Society as a recommending source on judges. I did so openly and freely, and then realized they were under the thumb of a real sleazebag named Leonard Leo.
Let's go.
A bad person who, in his own way, probably hates America and obviously has his own separate ambitions. We'll go through this in a bit. But so what does Trump do? Then today, he says 2 weeks ago, China was in grave danger. The very high tariffs I set made it virtually impossible for China to trade, in capital letters, I don't know why, into the United States marketplace, which is by far number 1 in the world. We went, in effect, cold turkey with China, and it was devastating for them. Many factories closed, and there was, to put it mildly, civil unrest. Now, incidentally, all of that is untrue. I mean, blatantly untrue. There was no civil unrest in China because
there was a guy who stood in front of a tank with some groceries. That's an old-fashioned word, groceries.
No, Trump's like the guy, like the ex, like, she's definitely not over me. She thinks about me all the time. China's like, we can do this all domestically. We don't care about you. You rely on our cheap goods.
Also,
idiot.
The rest of the world buys from us, too.
Exactly. And then he says, I saw what was happening and I didn't like it. For them, not for us. In other words, I'm a good guy. I'm nice. I saw that. So I made a fast deal with China in order to save them from what I thought was going to be a very bad situation. And I didn't want to see things happen. This is where, like, a significant portion of Republican voters go, Donald Trump is so benevolent. Like, he even shows grace to our Chi-Com enemies.
I guess we will sacrifice so that China doesn't have civil unrest now.
Right.
Yes. What a good guy. But then they stabbed him in the back. Because of this deal, everyone quickly stabilized and China got back to business as usual. They must have reopened those factories and the civil unrest calmed down. Everybody was happy. That is the good news. The bad news is that China, perhaps not surprisingly to some, has totally violated its agreement with us. So much for being Mr. Nice Guy. In other words, he is backfilling. I didn't get chicken out on the tariffs with China. I helped them out.
Yes.
I was a nice guy.
But this is where we have to, make chicken taco out of chicken shit and create a situation where Trump is like now that we can exploit this fissure with Leonard Leo, right? Trump always chickens out of throwing Leonard Leo into a cold, dark cell.
I think you're overusing the taco metaphor.
Stop trying to make taco work, Emma.
Taco, you're just trying to shove it into every meal.
Trying to shove tacos down my throat.
Taco chicken into chicken shit? What? What are you saying?
I was trying to be creative.
So folksy.
Chicken salad out of chicken shit. That's the phrase. Chicken taco out of chicken shit. There's no judgment in brainstorming, and I really feel like my creativity
We should
is being
do this
stifled.
before the show.
It's like legalized comedy.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. The stock market seems to be, I don't know, going up and down a little bit. We don't know.
Mostly down.
I mean, largely, the stock market not indicative of the real economy. It is indicative of whether largely wealthy people are making or losing money. And because of the way that our system works, they tend to be able to put outside pressure and greater pressure than just, normal people who are going to lose their jobs because of this. Spoke to Matt Brunig yesterday on tariffs. I mean, really the story, and we spoke to David Dane about this on Friday. The bottom line is, if you want to do an industrial policy, and that is encouraged, it's quite effective to the extent that Biden was able to do some of it.
Although Trump's trying to kneecap it and fire all of the probationary employees at the office that was tasked with implementing the CHIPS Act. So
makes it a lot more difficult to implement. But the bottom line is tariffs can serve a function, but you need some form of plan. And tariffs are one element of that industrial policy plan. We want to build we need to have, as a national security reason, we need to be able to build semiconductors, whatever it is. We need to be able to build EV batteries, whatever it is. And you can say, we're going to slap tariffs on increasing tariffs on batteries that are manufactured other places so that we can build those batteries here. In the meantime, we're going to give subsidies to companies that come in and build batteries. And I'm just making this up as just a random thing that we might want, although we probably do. We're also going to provide training. And we're going to do an analysis of what's the best 3 places in the country to help build these industries. Because there is extra labor who may have expertise coming from a different thing was manufactured in that area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe this is a good place to build it because of some byproducts from the manufacturing, whatever it is. But not only is there not an industrial policy by this administration, they don't even seem to have a plan on their own terms. Like, no one seems to, the only people who seem to be going out and talking, and we're going to have maybe some clips from what's going on in the Senate Finance Committee from the top trade person in the administration. But you have Scott Bessent, who is Bessent, who is the Treasury Secretary. He's on one page. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, seems to be in a completely different book, never mind on a separate page. Then you've got Peter Navarro, who seems to be wandering out there, and it turns out this guy's expertise that he built most of his trade book on, he was quoting from an economist who turns out to be him, but with an acronym. It was
Ron Vera or something, but it's the name of his last name mixed up. Now I'm forgetting the name.
Yes, his name is Navarro, and he made Ron Vera.
Right, Ron Vera.
And he cited him over and over again.
Right. And someone IM'd about this with like anagrams of Matt and my names yesterday, and we didn't get the joke, but sorry about that. That was a funny joke that we didn't get it at the time. I saw that Rachel Maddow segment last night. It's insane.
Do you understand that, like, if you were to write a book and just cover all of just what we've just said in any type of, like, you know, as a comedy, like, you know, like a Magic Christian version? I don't know if you ever read that, Matt. You should actually maybe check that out. If you were ever to write this in a book, people would just be like, this is so, you know, so over the top. It's like Dadaist. But here we are. And here is Scott Bessent. This is clip number, this is from the Tucker Carlson show. And this is where he has a plan. This actually fits a lot better than we thought. They're firing all of these people from federal positions who, if they happen to have a 401k, some of them might, or some type of like, some of them may have some money put away. Unlikely too many. I guess about 40% of the public has something like this, where you have like an IRA or a 401k. Guess what they don't want to do now? Retire, because they just realized, like, oh no. But we need those people to quit, and you'll find out why.
So what we are doing, on one side, the president is reordering trade. On the other side, we are shedding excess labor in the federal government and bringing down federal borrowings. And then on the other side, that will give us the labor that we need for the new manufacturing, and we're going to re-lever the private sector. So the private sector, in essence, has been in recession during the Biden years. And this is an opportunity to right-size the federal government and unleash the private sector again, because it's been hemmed down by excessive regulation and it's been crowded out by the government.
Okay, this is so baby-brained. First off, we're shedding excess federal workers. Put up, and we're cutting federal spending. Put up that thing from the Brookings Institute. Do we have that? Yeah. This just gives you a real-time notion, not up to the hour, but almost up to the day, as to how much federal spending we have saved here. And there's a graph. Where is it? It was there. No, where's that graph?
Scroll up.
It's up at the top. Just.
Please wait, it's loading.
Okay, yeah, it's loading. I don't know why it's taking so long. But the fact of the matter is that federal spending has not gone down at all. We can show that in a minute. You can go to the Brookings Institute and look for, I can't remember what the title of it is.
Tracking federal expenditures in real time.
And we have not saved any money whatsoever from all of this. It's been a complete crap show. Just by cutting what we've cut at the IRS, we're probably going to have $500 billion less of tax receipts, according to the IRS. So the idea that we're saving all this money, also the idea that the government crowds out the private market is also just absurd. It's conceivable that people with government jobs help maintain the value of labor, if that's what they mean. By firing all these people in government, we're actually making labor cheaper for people in the private sector. But all of this is just completely baby-brained, because I got news for you. If, in the best case of scenario, if a couple of factories were developed to deal with the products that we're no longer going to be able to afford from the rest of the world, and again, like even all our imports, it's like 12%. The real problem is that it's the inputs for things that like we can't produce here, and we have produced in China, and it comes here, and then we make a final product.
Right. They're doing it in reverse, as we were saying. Like, if you wanted to do a multi-year-long domestic manufacturing policy where you were to create these facilities, heavy state investment and then impose certain tariffs, that would make sense. But they're putting the cart before the horse, and then there's no horse. In fact, they're trying to kill the horse, the CHIPS Act, which potentially, given what they're trying to say, like that, they could have built on that theoretically, but that's not obviously what they're interested in. I also love the idea that these fired HHS staffers are going to go like work building semiconductors.
Exactly.
What are we talking about?
No, it's absolute garbage.
But it is labor discipline. They're upset about the fact that unemployment has been at such a low percentage, even though there's a lot of underemployment. People are still making starvation wages and have to work 3 jobs. But like, they're upset that there's not more unemployment, which gives them more leverage over their workforce.
100%. But again, the idea that someone you fired in February who works at the EPA is going to be working in a factory by September is just absurd. It's just absurd. It's absurd. It's insane. But here's Besant again now running into a problem where instead of like, Tucker Carlson, whose job it is to increase his clicks, here is Larry Kudlow, who, again, all he cares about at the end of the day is tax cuts and stock market going up. He's probably also, happy he's no longer working in the Trump administration just from a personal health standpoint, because the pressure seemed to really get to him last time. But here he is with Scott Besant, basically reading Besant the Riot Act.
I don't know if you heard Art Laffer in the prior interview, but Art doesn't believe that the trade deficit should be a metric. I don't really either. I mean, Mr. Secretary, if you get your tax cuts, and I guess you're well on the way, you get your deregulation. These are all huge pro-growth items. Okay. We will grow. We, the United States, will grow faster than Japan. We will grow faster than almost anybody. Therefore, almost by definition, by growing faster than the rest of the world, we're always going to have a trade deficit. So I don't know why you'd want to use the trade deficit in a calculation for a reciprocal charge. I understand your point about non-tariff barriers. I get that. That's why I would have chosen a handful of countries, I don't know, maybe 10 or a dozen countries, and really carefully pinpointed it. But to apply this to the whole world on the basis of trade deficits, is that really the best in your judgment? You've been around a long time. You've looked at these. You've done analysis. Is that really where we should be at?
Well, look, Larry, the trade deficit...
Let me just say one thing. When we have a trade deficit, part of it could be because their market's not open to our products. But a big part of it's going to be their market's not as big as ours. May not even be worth it at the end of the day for our manufacturers to focus on this. There could be. We want to increase our, car battery business or whatever it is. You target specific places. But they're not doing that. They're doing it on everything. And a trade deficit is also a function of our being the world's currency. Because our currency is the one where, up until at least today, if you want to own a stable currency, because yours may not be that stable, or you want to do business with other countries, you get the American dollar. That keeps the American dollar strong. When the American dollar is strong, that means we are more likely to have a trade deficit.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line.
We also have a trade deficit with China in many ways because, our free trade deals, we outsource our manufacturing and our labor to areas of the world where it's cheaper. So, we import more than China buys from us. I mean, this is just a visual of this. But you can see, there's a trade deficit, but that's because the United States benefits from it. And now they're pissed that China has a lot of central planning and doesn't need the United States imports, and other countries don't need our meat that's underregulated compared to other areas of the world, which is also what Navarro and others are upset about. But no, China and some other countries that have been affected by, say, U.S. sanctions, they've found ways to manufacture some of these goods or develop other trade relationships. All this does is incentivize other countries that were normally in our orbit and buying from us to go to China, who's a more stable partner.
And let's be clear that China exports to us about 12% of their exports. They'll deal with it.
Yeah.
I have a feeling better than we're going to deal with it, at least in the short run. But all right, continue here.
Really where we should be at?
Well, look, Larry, the trade deficit, as you and Art know, is a result of three things. It's a result of the terms of trade, it's a result of our budget deficit, and it's the result of the level of the dollar. And we want a strong dollar. We are getting our budget deficit under control, which I actually think will help with the trade deficit. And then the third part is...
Pause it. The way that the getting the budget deficit under control, as he says, which of course has nothing to do with trade policy. It has nothing to do with their trade war. If you get the budget deficit down, there is an argument it will weaken the dollar, because when we borrow money to deal with our deficit, we're borrowing at least some of that from foreign countries. That strengthens the dollar. But that will impact the trade deficit, but their actions to deal with the trade deficit are probably going to hurt our budget deficit, because we're going to have a recession. We're going to lose workers before we start having this magic renaissance of manufacturing that they think is going to happen. And we're going to have less receipts, tax receipts. So it's the opposite, but he's like switching the causation to address something he can't address at all, which is why we did this.
He's not even addressing really what Kudlow said there. He's just like listing the elements that go into making trade policy. He's filibustering because all of these guys, Bessent is my now pick to be the first departure. He's leaking to Politico, it seems like, clearly, because he represents Wall Street. Him and Kudlow are very similar people. They just care if lines going up and everyone's getting rich. And maybe some people bought the dip. We'll get to some of those theories later, and maybe had longs and other investments where that insulated from them. But that could be the infighting in the Trump administration now, between people whose financial position benefits from the economy crashing and people whose financial position doesn't.
Like you said, it's a fill time thing. It's basically like saying Wikipedia defines a tariff as because he needs to get 400
exactly.
words.
All right, let's just finish him out.
We are getting our budget deficit under control, which I actually think will help with the trade deficit. And then the third part is the tariff or the trade barriers, which we're seeing. So I am confident that we will, again, as I said, the four factors will be tariffs, non-tariff trade barriers, the currency manipulation, and whether it's wage or industrial subsidies. And I think we're going to have very, very productive negotiations with
negotiations.
These. And, again, as you said on tariffs.
Incidentally, he just started this sort of like this diarrhea of the mouth by saying, I'm confident that, and never brought it home.
And when he says negotiations, he's telling on himself, because yesterday he had said publicly that they had started negotiations with Japan at the same time that an op-ed was published in the Financial Times by Peter Navarro, who's the lunatic running this thing, saying that there are no negotiations to be had.
They're going, I mean, what's absolutely clear is this administration is going in 14 different directions. There is no plan for this. And the only question is, will Donald Trump decide that the pain from his billionaire buddies is sufficient for him to reverse himself? And if not, then, I think just about the rest of us are effed.
Going into a recession, yeah.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. We've been playing some videos of folks pushing back on ICE. Here is a guy in San Diego. This is on Sunday. Ice was really big in San Diego. This is number 16. Ice was going around in San Diego, and local residents started to push back big time. This is one guy who just went up and saw an ICE van. I imagine, I don't know when the timing was relative to the other footage we have, but again, you deserve a medal.
It appears to be the same neighborhood. I know that neighborhood at South Park. Looks to be the same place.
Hi. Enjoying your morning?
Looks like
you're the $30 an hour guys.
Unmarked van.
Let's see. Just taking a look at your equipment. See you later, bud. I'll follow you wherever you go.
Say bye, assholes. Good for these guys. Good for them. And then things got a little heated. This is just a picture of ICE agents. Number 15. Just to give you a sense of how these ICE agents. Now, are they going to arrest paramilitary groups?
What
Look at
a
these guys.
joke.
Pop this up. Pop this up.
Big tough guys here.
Look at that.
Like a desert
They get
storm.
to dress up like they're like a SWAT team.
Like they're doing real safety work.
I think that's a woman there. Right?
Yeah, I mean, these guys really going in because you got to be, when you're going after mothers, boy, sometimes they scratch.
So calm. We got a 14-year-old girl who's crying. Gonna need tear gas over here. Stat.
Who's got my zip ties?
How much are we paying for this? One of the best things I've ever seen. Who was it? I think it was Charlie Kirk said like they don't protest the cops in the UK. When I was there, I was leaving a Arsenal football game, and everyone started yelling at the cops on horses. We bought your hats. We bought your hats. What a waste of tax. We bought your hats. And that attitude that guy takes. Like, why are we wasting money for basically goon squads to sit and play Candy Crush until they go ruin like some 24-year-old father's
life? They go around with all these like sort of like all this weaponry and like it's all just, I mean, give me a break. And here is a image of
nice
of folks in the neighborhood basically getting into their faces. And do we have video of them backing up here? Is that number?
Yeah, we do.
This is also just like
number 18.
When people, I'm not saying everybody in this crowd is white, but this is also using your privilege where you're not necessarily going to be targeted immediately because you're going to be racially profiled and standing up for your neighbors who are subjected to potential deportation.
And apparently these ICE agents had to disperse. They were so lucky to probably have to disperse their smoke bombs or whatever it is because
their little toys.
They get to disperse it because of the neighborhood folks who were basically get out of here, a-holes. Deploy flashbangs! Deploy flashbangs! I mean, good for these people.
We need to bring back cop mockery and things like that. I saw some essay, or it was like someone make this point that old cartoons and other media used to portray cops as like lazy with the donuts and stuff, and then 9/11 happened and everything became like how awesome our military and our policing are. We should bring back that kind of sentiment.
Yeah, I 100% agree. People are talking about abolish ICE, how we need to bring back that slogan. And look, I think community safety needs a lot of state investment and that sort of stuff. Not to these pigs, not to cops. This is what they do. This is what they've been preparing for my entire life under the whole like post 9/11 thing of giving these guys more and more toys so they can dress up like G.I. Joe for their frankly like not real for a job that again isn't really conducive to public safety. What brought crime down in the subway system recently that everybody was obsessed about is that more people are using it than we're doing it on COVID. It's not more goons playing Candy Crush for, like that guy said, $30 an hour until they need to crack a head open.
Can I just shout out the Star Bar, it's a cool bar in that neighborhood and is one of the places that was targeted by these raids. I just want to shout them out. And also, over the weekend, a couple people, friends of mine from high school, like texted me and said they've been listening to the show and like a lot of us who grew up in San Diego who were sort of lefties, it can be really frustrating to live in San Diego because it is a conservative place and there is this huge military presence and it's good to see that this sort of thing gets this sort of response in San Diego.
Well, it's also not when Matt mentioned community policing, these people are not from your community.
Right.
They're not it's so explicit how they are outside unwelcome visitors trying to terrorize the community.
And that neighborhood in particular, South Park, is a very traditional like Mexican American neighborhood. So it's the sort of neighborhood where people who work in those establishments live.
Right.
Well, go back. Just like we're buying these mother effers, Mercedes vans. Like those vans. Those vans cost
those Sprinter vans
$200 grand or something like that.
And they're all outfitted. You can even see like.
I was thinking about renting one of those for like a spring break. With Saul and. Those things are expensive.
I know.
Just to rent.
I mean, it's the perfect brand for these goons to be rolling up in, though.
No
Mercedes.
Kidding.
Oh, very apropos. Yeah.
They got IBM computers in there too.
Yeah. Drive home in a
keep track of everybody.
It pops a couple aspirin, Bayer aspirin, and then they're off to the races. More shaming of those people.
Bring it back.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.